My name's Audrey, and I used to be your typical married woman with a steady job as a stockbroker at some big shot company. I had it all: a decent job, a husband of 7 years, and an adorable little girl who was growing up faster than I could blink. But you know how they say life can change in an instant? One day, my husband drops this bomb on me. He's been fooling around with some knockout, and now he's head over heels for her. Just like that, he wants a divorce. I remember standing there, my mouth hanging open like a fish out of water, trying to wrap my head around what he just said. "You're what?" I managed to choke out. He had the decency to look a little ashamed, at least. "I'm sorry, Audrey. I didn't mean for this to happen, but I can't help how I feel." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him feel as shitty as I did right then. "What about our daughter?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He ran a hand through his hair, looking everywhere but at me. "I'll still be there for her, of course. I'm not abandoning her." "Yeah, just me," I thought bitterly. The next few weeks were a blur of tears, anger, and more paperwork than I ever wanted to see in my life. My ex, to his credit, didn't try to screw me over. He paid a hefty sum in compensation without dragging me through court, and he set up a generous alimony for our little girl. Small consolations, but I'll take what I can get. First thing I did? Changed my name back to my maiden name, Collins, and my daughter's too. The next 5 years were, well, they were something. I threw myself into work, trying to fill the void left by my failed marriage. We had our struggles, sure, but we made it work. Then, just when I thought life had settled into a new normal, it threw me another curveball. My ex-husband died. I stood there at his funeral, our daughter's hand in mine, feeling a strange mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Grief? Confusion? Anger? All of the above? As we were about to leave, this guy in a suit approached us. Turned out to be my ex's lawyer. Ms. Collins, he corrected himself, glancing at his papers. "Your ex-husband left everything to you and your daughter. He left a letter for you as well." I stood there, letter in hand, feeling like the ground had just shifted beneath my feet. That night, after tucking my daughter into bed, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the letter with trembling hands. As I read, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. "Audrey, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I hope you'll find it in your heart to grant me this last request. I realized my mistake in leaving you, but by then, it was too late to undo the damage I'd caused. I'm leaving everything to you and our daughter. Please use it to give her the best life possible. And Audrey, I hope you can find happiness again. You deserve it. I'm sorry for everything. Your stupid husband, Jason Moore." I don't know how long I sat there, tears streaming down my face. The bastard had the nerve to apologize now? But as my anger faded, I realized I had been given an opportunity. A chance to secure a better future for my daughter and myself. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with financial advisors and lawyers. Suddenly, I was wealthy. It was surreal. I set up a hefty education fund for my daughter, ensuring her future was secure. But I wasn't content to just sit on this money. I'd always been good at my job, and now I had the capital to strike out on my own. So, I did something that surprised even me. I opened my own brokerage firm. "You're doing what?" my best friend, Sarah, asked over coffee one day. I grinned, feeling more alive than I had in years. "Opening my own firm. And get this, I'm naming it after my ex-husband's last name." Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Are you serious? After everything he put you through?" I shrugged. "Call it a thank you for the seed money. Besides, it's a good name for business. And you know what? It turned out I had a knack for running my own show. The company took off like a rocket. Before I knew it, I was hiring staff, expanding operations, and raking in profits that made my old salary look like pocket change. One day, as I was leaving the office late, again, my assistant caught me at the elevator. "Ms. Audrey, your daughter called." She said it's not an emergency, but she'd like you to call her back when you can. I felt a pang of guilt. I'd been so wrapped up in work lately, I hadn't been spending much time at home. Thanks, Jessica. I'll call her right now. In the car, I dialed home. My daughter picked up on the first ring. Mom, are you coming home soon? The weariness in her voice broke my heart. I'm on my way now, sweetheart. Is everything okay? There was a pause. Yeah, I guess. It's just, you're never home anymore. I miss you. As I hung up, I realized something had to change. I'd escaped one trap of workaholism only to fall into another. It was time to reassess my priorities. The next day, I called a meeting with my top executives. It was time to make some changes, both in the company and in my life. As I looked around the conference room at the team I'd built, I knew I was making the right decision. I'd decided to step back from day-to-day operations, I announced, ignoring their shocked expressions. It's time I focused on what's really important, my family. I hired a capable director to handle daily operations, and I took on a more passive role. It felt strange at first, like I was letting go of a part of myself. But the moment I saw my daughter's face light up when I picked her up from school, I knew I'd made the right choice. As we walked to the car, she chattered excitedly about her day. I realized with a pang of guilt how much I'd been missing. Hey, I said as we buckled up. How about we take a little trip this weekend? Just you and me? That weekend getaway turned into a series of adventures. We traveled, explored new places, and most importantly, spent time together. I enrolled her in various after-school activities, art classes, language lessons, you name it. She was thriving, and I was there to see every moment of it. The years flew by, and before I knew it, my little girl was heading off to college. She'd grown into a remarkable young woman, smart, kind, and surprisingly humble, despite our wealth. She'd chosen to study architecture, a decision that filled me with pride. The day we moved her into her dorm, I reflected on how much our lives had changed. From the struggles of single motherhood to the unexpected windfall, and now this new chapter. I wondered what the future held for both of us. I didn't have to wait long to find out. A few years later, my daughter graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious architecture firm. She was thriving in her career, and I couldn't have been prouder. Then came the day she called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. Mom, I've met someone. It's serious. I felt a flutter of excitement and a touch of apprehension. That's wonderful, honey. Tell me about him. She gushed about her new boyfriend, who happened to be the head of her department. As I listened, I felt a mix of joy for her happiness and a protective instinct I couldn't quite shake. As my daughter's relationship grew more serious, I found myself thinking about the future. I'd been living in our big house alone for years, and it suddenly felt too empty, too full of memories. That's when I made a decision that surprised even me. I started house hunting, but not for another mansion. No, I was looking for something with character, something that needed a little love. And I found it, an old house with a neglected garden and worn interiors, but with an atmosphere that spoke to me. When I told my daughter about my plans, she was shocked. Mom, are you sure? That place sounds like it needs a lot of work. I laughed. That's the point, sweetie. I need a project, something to pour my energy into. She hesitated. But what about our house? All those memories. I took her hand. Those memories are in our hearts, not in the walls. Besides, I think it's time for you to have that house. You and your future husband will need the space. Her eyes widened. Mom, we're not even engaged yet. I winked at her. Call it mother's intuition. So, I bought the old house and threw myself into renovating it. It was hard work, but satisfying. As I stripped wallpaper and repainted walls, I felt like I was rebuilding a part of myself too. One day, as I was wrestling with an overgrown rosebush in the garden, my phone rang. It was my daughter. Mom, he proposed, she squealed before I could even say hello. I nearly dropped the pruning shears. "Oh honey, that's wonderful. Congratulations. We want you to meet him properly," she said. "Can we come over to your new place this weekend?" I looked around at the half-finished renovations and dirt-smudged walls. "Are you sure you don't want to meet somewhere nicer?" "No, Mom," she insisted. "We want to see your new home." The weekend arrived faster than I expected. I was out in the garden, trying to make some semblance of order in the chaos of weeds, when I heard a car pull up. "Mom," my daughter called out. "We're here." I stood up, wiping my dirty hands on my even dirtier work clothes. As they approached, I got my first look at my daughter's fiancé. He was tall, well-dressed, and had a polite smile on his face. But something in his eyes made me pause. I extended my hand. "It's nice to finally meet you. I'm Audrey." He looked at my dirt-covered hand with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was that disgust? No, surely I was imagining things. "Pleased to meet you," he said, barely touching my hand before quickly letting go. As we walked into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He examined the old furnishings and half-finished renovations with poorly concealed disdain. "So, Audrey," he said, turning to me. "How did you afford to send your daughter to such a good college if you're living in a place like this?" I caught my daughter's shocked expression and decided to have a little fun. I winked at her, hoping she'd play along. "Oh, my ex-husband helped out with that," I said casually. "We divorced years ago, but he made sure our daughter was taken care of." The young man's face tightened even more at the word divorce. I could practically see him reassessing me, and not in a good way. "Would you like something to eat?" I offered, gesturing to the simple spread I'd prepared. "No, thank you," he said quickly. "I'm not hungry." But I knew the truth, he just didn't want to eat off my old plates in my quaint house. As they were leaving, my daughter hung back for a moment. "Mom, why didn't you tell him about, everything?" I smiled. "Let's keep that our little secret for now, okay? I want to get to know him without all that getting in the way." She nodded, though she looked confused. As I watched them drive away, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. Something told me this was just the beginning of a very interesting journey. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of wedding preparations and hushed conversations. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling I had about my daughter's fiancé, but I kept my concerns to myself. Then, on a bright Sunday afternoon, my daughter surprised me with a visit, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Mom," she called out as she burst through the door of my still-in-progress home. "We've set a date for the wedding. There's more. We want you to meet his parents this weekend. They're hosting a dinner at their place." My stomach did a little flip, but I plastered on a smile. Of course, I'd love to meet them. As the weekend approached, I found myself fretting over what to wear. I settled on a simple, elegant dress I'd had tailored years ago. It wasn't designer, but it was classic and well-made. I hoped it would be appropriate for whatever awaited me. The day of the dinner, I drove through neighborhoods that got progressively more upscale until I reached the address my daughter had given me. I had to double-check to make sure I hadn't made a mistake. The house, if you could call it that, was more like a palace. It stood imposingly at the end of a long, winding driveway, all gleaming windows and perfectly manicured lawns. As I parked my modest car among the luxury vehicles, I felt like a dandelion in a garden of roses. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was here for my daughter, and made my way to the front door. My daughter's future in-laws descended the grand staircase like royalty greeting a commoner. They were impeccably dressed, dripping in jewels that probably cost more than my entire house. "Welcome," the mother said, her voice sickly sweet. Her smile was wide but didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're so pleased to finally meet you." Her husband, a stern-looking man with silver hair, nodded curtly. "Yes, we're absolutely thrilled that your daughter will be joining our family. She'll want for nothing now, I can assure you of that." I bit the inside of my cheek, forcing myself to maintain a polite smile. "That's very kind of you to say." The mother laughed, a tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. Oh, we're not kind, dear. We're just not prejudiced. We're more than happy to welcome your daughter into our family, despite, well, you know. I felt my eyebrow raise of its own accord. I'm afraid I don't know. What exactly do you mean? The woman's smile turned patronizing, and she reached out to pat my arm condescendingly. Well, dear, we know all about your modest circumstances. Our son has told us everything. Raising a child all alone, living in that poor little house of yours. He mentioned it's practically falling apart at the seams. It must have been so difficult for you. Her words hung in the air, dripping with false sympathy and real disdain. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, she continued, her voice lowered as if sharing a secret. But don't you worry. Once your daughter marries our son, she'll never have to think about money again. She'll finally know what it's like to live in a real home, not some crumbling shack. I felt my daughter tense beside me, but I gave her a reassuring smile and turned back to her future mother-in-law. Please, do continue, I said, my voice steady, despite the anger bubbling inside me. I'm fascinated to hear more about your generous perspective. The woman seemed to take this as an invitation to further display her condescension. Oh, darling, I hope you're not expecting any handouts from us. We believe in earning one's way, you see. We won't be extending our generosity beyond our new daughter-in-law. I nodded, forcing a look of understanding onto my face. Of course, I wouldn't dream of it. Deciding to play along with their assumptions, I adopted a meek demeanor. I'm just grateful my daughter will have such opportunities. This seemed to please them, and they visibly relaxed. As we moved to the opulent dining room, I couldn't help but notice the groom's father eyeing me with a mixture of pity and disdain. So, tell me, I said, turning to him. What line of work are you in? He puffed up with pride. I'm a stockbroker, one of the best in the business, if I do say so myself. Oh, how interesting, I replied, feigning ignorance. Which company, if you don't mind me asking? When he named the company, my company, I had to use every ounce of self-control not to react. I caught my daughter's eye, and we shared a brief, knowing look. As the evening wore on and the wine flowed freely, the groom's father became increasingly boastful. He leaned towards me, his words slightly slurred. You know, he said in a conspiratorial tone, you can't make real money by playing by the rules. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, how do you mean? He gestured grandly at the luxurious surroundings. You think I got all this by being a good little employee? Huh. He leaned in closer, the smell of expensive wine on his breath. I've got a system, see? I use the company's resources to wine and dine potential clients, then I redirect them to my personal investment schemes. All the profit, none of the overhead. I felt my daughter's hand tighten on mine under the table. I squeezed back, silently urging her to stay quiet. But surely that's risky? I asked, careful to keep my tone curious rather than accusatory. He waved his hand dismissively. Bah, the company's too big to notice. And even if they did, I'm too valuable to let go. It's a perfect setup. As he continued to boast about his fraudulent activities, I simply smiled and nodded, all the while making mental notes. This evening had certainly turned out to be more illuminating than I could have ever imagined. As the evening progressed, the groom's mother stood up with a flourish. Shall we move to the dining room? Dinner is served. We followed her into an equally opulent dining room, where a table groaned under the weight of fine china and crystal. As everyone took their seats, I noticed the others had plates piled high with gourmet dishes. But when I looked down at my own place setting, I was stunned to see a cheap plastic bowl filled with instant noodles. The groom's mother's voice dripped with false sweetness. We thought you'd prefer something more familiar. After all, beggars can't be choosers, can they? We wouldn't want to overwhelm you with our fancy food. I felt my daughter stiffen beside me, her face flushing with anger. Before I could react, she stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Mom, we're leaving, now. Her voice shook with barely contained rage. The groom reached for her arm. Honey, please, they didn't mean. She yanked her arm away. Don't touch me. How dare you all sit here and insult my mother like this? I won't stand for it. Her fiancé's face darkened. You'll come crawling back, he sneered. Where else are you going to find someone as rich and promising as me? I stood up slowly, pride swelling in my chest for my daughter's strength. But before we left, I had one last card to play. Before we go, I said calmly, I have a question. Did you know that the last name I use is actually my maiden name? The groom's parents exchanged confused glances. My married name, I continued, is the same as your company's name. More. I looked pointedly at the groom's father. Their faces paled as realization dawned. That's right, I said, my voice steely. I own the company you work for. And I'm very interested in investigating the fraudulent activities you so kindly shared with me earlier. Suddenly, their demeanor changed completely. They began pleading, apologizing profusely, their earlier arrogance replaced by desperation. Please, we didn't know. We can explain everything. My daughter and I exchanged disgusted looks at their sudden change of heart. Save it for the authorities, I said, turning to leave. As we drove home, my daughter turned to me, her eyes brimming with tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea they were like that. Can you ever forgive me? I reached over and squeezed her hand. Sweetheart, there's nothing to forgive. If anything, I should thank you. You've helped me uncover some serious issues in my company. As we pulled into our driveway, I felt a mix of emotions, relief that the truth was out, pride in my daughter, and determination to set things right at my company. In the days following that disastrous dinner, I threw myself into action. I initiated a thorough investigation at my company, working closely with our internal audit team and external investigators. It didn't take long for the truth to come to light. The groom's father's boasts weren't just drunken ramblings, they were confessions of real, extensive fraud. The evidence was damning: falsified records, misappropriated funds, and a long list of clients he'd redirected to his personal schemes. I sat in my office, staring at the final report, a mix of anger and disappointment washing over me. How long would this have continued if not for that chance encounter? What do you want to do, Ms. Audrey? My head of legal asked. I took a deep breath. File every possible lawsuit. And contact the authorities. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. The legal battles were intense, but we won every single one. The groom's father was forced to pay substantial damages and compensation. As for his position in the company, well, that was an easy decision. I called him into my office personally. The arrogant man I'd met at dinner was gone, replaced by a pale, trembling shadow. You're fired, I said simply. And don't expect a recommendation. In fact, I'll make sure every firm in this industry knows exactly what kind of person you are. Meanwhile, my daughter was dealing with her own fallout. Her ex-fiancé tried to crawl back, all apologies and promises. Please, he begged over the phone. I didn't know. We can start over. I overheard her response, fierce and final, never contact me again. The sound of her blocking his number was music to my ears. As the dust settled, I made good on my earlier decision. I signed over the deed to my large house to my daughter. Mom, I can't accept this, she protested. I smiled, squeezing her hand. You can, and you will. Think of it as a fresh start. As for me, I moved into my small, renovated house full-time. After all the drama, the simplicity was a balm to my soul. I spent my days tending to my garden, volunteering at local charities, and occasionally checking in on the company to make sure everything was running smoothly. One sunny afternoon, as I sat on my porch swing, sipping lemonade and watching the sunset, my daughter dropped by. How are you doing, Mom? She asked, settling beside me. I smiled, feeling a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. I'm doing great, sweetheart. Really great. As we sat there, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple, I reflected on our journey. From struggling single mother to wealthy businesswoman, from heartbreak to healing. It hadn't been an easy road, but sitting here now, I wouldn't change a thing. Life had thrown its curveballs, but we'd come out stronger. And now, in this small house filled with love and memories, I'd found something far more valuable than any fortune: true happiness.